Welcome back, chess fans. In this video, Magnus Carlsen playing Wei Yi. Magnus Carlsen was training Wei Yi. It's a Blitz game, and we're gonna see why Magnus is the #1 in the world. Knight f3, d5, g3, King's Indians attack. We go on. Wei Yi takes the center with e5. No big deal. g3 and e4. In this position, the Chinese player who is leading the tournament at that point, maybe should I play knight d7. Let's say we continue, castle, c3, bishop g4, h3, bishop e6, with a normal position. Instead, the Chinese player takes on e4 and trades the queen and play bishop g4. Now, there's nothing wrong with that move with black, but who is the king of endgames? Magnus Carlsen. Now, there was a little trick here. If you play h3, black takes, and knight d4, attacks f3, attacks c2, white is lost. Of course, Magnus sees that and plays c3, so that the knight doesn't come to d4. Now I'm gonna go quickly. They were playing a 5-minute game, so a Blitz game, knight g5, bishop d7, knight d2. It's a very quiet position, and to be honest, this is quite equal at this point. And now Wei Yi plays long castle. Black is perfectly fine here. There's actually no advantage for white. So how can Magnus wave his magic and win a game? Okay, I'm gonna continue. Knight b3. So I think Magnus is trying to develop his pieces. a5. So very aggressive. The Chinese player has played long castle and now he's going a5, a4. Now during the game I thought that was a little bit weird, so I thought, well, you're weakening the b5 square. So I thought bishop b5 would be very good for white. But here Wei Yi would have played knight a7 and the bishop has to retreat somewhere. Keep in mind h3 is also attacked. So on a5, bishop e3 logical, a4. And here I was thinking maybe the knight can come here, but that's no big deal because black would be happy to exchange pieces. Instead, very patiently, knight bd2 played. Bishop f8, obviously the c5 square is something that black wants to do. But here black was perfectly fine and more active would have been f5. The idea before f5 is if you take, I'll take back, and now that bishop will have a great scope. So a5 was excellent, followed by rook h8. It's actually black who is better. Let's say rook h1, rook h8, and white has nothing. Instead, bishop f8 trying to come to c5. Logical but still equal. Before play, take, bishop c5. Now we take, and we play b4. And here, the problem is like the rook here is gonna come to a8, right? So keep in mind that on take, you could take, or you could simply play rook a3, and that knight here is actually stuck. So here, the knight retreats. Knight c4 played, let's continue, f6, check, rook a1. We can see that white now has the advantage because this is a very passive knight, and the king here is definitely less safe on c8 than the king on g1. Now Wei Yi decided to double the pawn, and now we have this position. What to do here? We have double pawns for black, but apart from that, it's a very solid position. And black has exchanged pieces. Feel free to think, but what would you play over here? And this is where we saw Magnus class. He plays knight h4, attacks g7. Bishop f7, logical. And now, what was the idea? knight g2, and knight g2, going to e3, going to d5. So what an idea here. The rooks are perfectly placed. The bishop has nowhere to attack. The knight here cannot win this pawn. So knight h4, bishop f7, knight g2, coming to e3. Now knight c6, the rook comes back, rook d7, bishop c4, we exchange pieces. Here Wei had to defend, but he attacks the knight, and the knight goes to e3. Clearly, the knight wants to come to d5. So Wei plays in 1 second, 97. And here, ladies and gentlemen, we are move 33. The position is a little bit better for white. Why is that? We have these damaged pawns. But black is very solid. Black should be able to draw. And here, it's a 5 minutes game, and Magnus spent 1 minute and 12 seconds in this position. And he couldn't find how to attack, right? Now the computer, I checked with Stockfish 16, recommend a very quiet move like King G2. In the game, Magnus decided to exchange rooks on A8. But what was he thinking for so long? I'm pretty sure he was looking at rook A5 attacking B5. So now King C6 is logical. And here, how do you put more pressure for white? The idea, rook C1. Let's say black wait, and we play C4. Now if you take the pawn, which is actually pretty bad, knight C4, and you can see we have an attack on the king and a discovery. So on C4, rook D4, you give a pawn with black, but you're actually fine because you play rook C8 to prevent coming in. And remember, you're attacking 2 pawns at once. So let's say rook takes c8, knight c8, we're attacking b6, b4, and e4. So rook a5 looks like it's winning a pawn, but after king c6, black is holding. So instead, Magnus goes for rook a8. Now the game continues. We exchange a pair of rooks. The knight comes back to e3. Once again, Magnus wants to go here. So black play knight d7 in 1 second. King e2. In this position, again, you have to be patient. The best move here is to play g5. Instead, Wei pushes that pawn. f3, and now he's being impatient and gives up a pawn. White is happy to take the pawn, sorry. And here we take. So what do you do here? Feel free to pause the video. Now, a logical move would be to try to defend h4. But that's a very passive move, and the knight would come here with some attack. So instead, Magnus played rook g1, and he's trying to come to g7 or to g5. King d6, rook g5, rook takes h5. So here we have equal number of pawns and an endgame. Why do you play with white? Once again, feel free to think for yourself. Now, the most natural move is to take on a5. This leads to a draw. Show you how. Rook b6 and rook c4. This position is about equal. This is a rook endgame, easy to play for black. So instead here, Tiki Magnus plays rook takes f5. Of course, he spotted that you have a fork here winning. So Wei, in 3 seconds, play rook takes h3. Now, the rook is hanging. But rook f6 checks, and rook e6. You can see this rook is more active than that rook. We have 3 pawns each, but white is targeting all the black pawns. Knight c6, defense e5, check, rook g6. Expert play, trying to come to the 7th rank. Rook h1, mistake, check, and here, knight e4. What is Magnus doing? Knight c5 come to mind. King f7, check. We repeat once to get some time on the clock. And here, the killer move. Why do you play with white to try to play for a win? And the answer is rook d6. Amazing move, because on king e7, now you play rook d5. And that pawn is lost. If you defend, you're gonna lose that pawn. So finally, the king here is safe, 3 pawns each, but white is going through. So instead, check, king d3, and now rook h1 is a mistake. By the way, rook h3 is a mistake because you can do checks over here. But at any rate, the position is rook h1, check, king e6, finally you take, and here black made a mistake. King f5, and Magnus put it the fork, and Wei Yi resigned. But even if you play rook d1 checks and you try to come back here, I pin, and then I'm up 2 pawns, and there's no way that black can defend this. So for me, the key part of the game here, black tried to defend actively by playing the rook on the h file, but rook g1 followed by rook g7, rook g5, and finally we had white crashing through. Incredible game. From an equal endgame over here, we saw Magnus showing he's still number 1. I see you in the next one.